You might remember back in March, Sony tried their hand at their first Nintendo Direct style presentation with Sony State of Play, and admittedly, I thought it was bad. Like, it just wasn't all that good. There wasn't any big announcements, there wasn't any interesting information on it, and it was Sony's first time doing something like that, so maybe we should have cut him a bit of slack, but I was pretty harsh on that presentation because I just felt like it wasn't that good. So when a second presentation was announced for May, I was like, okay, well maybe they've learned some lessons, maybe there's some better stuff to talk about. Obviously Sony is not going to be at E3 2019 this year, so there's going to be things they want to talk about. Well, the presentation just wrapped up. It was about 12 minutes long, and honestly I could say I'm shocked right now because that was a damn good presentation. There was a lot of great stuff in there, some big surprises, some big announcements, and some reveals of games that we already knew about. So what was the Sony State of Play all about? What was the good, what was the bad, and what do I think they can improve upon? Sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about Sony State of Play and why it shocked the hell out of me.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my god, it's Stevie Richards! So at the start of this presentation, a Final Fantasy VII soundbite played, and I was kind of like, no, there's no way they're going to show something related to the Final Fantasy VII Remake during this. Obviously, that has had a very tumultuous development cycle. Supposedly, the whole project had been restarted from scratch, much like we have seen with Metroid Prime 4, and there's a lot of interesting things going on with Square Enix right now. But to start things off with that, I thought, well, maybe there's a chance. Maybe they'll show something Final Fantasy VII related. Now, the first thing they showed off was Monster Hunter World Iceborne, which is an expansion pack for the very successful Monster Hunter World that will be releasing sometime in September. Now, Monster Hunter World really set records for the Monster Hunter franchise. They sort of made it a bit easier to get into if you're new to the Monster Hunter franchise, and it was a very successful game. I played a bit of it on the PS4. I never really got heavily into it like I really wanted to, but I think this expansion pack looks really nice. Obviously, with the name Iceborne, a lot of it will be taking place in snow-ridden environments, and I thought it looked really good what they showed. It's definitely a progression of the Monster Hunter World game. They're adding more content to that game, which makes perfect sense as it was very, very successful to Capcom, and I think it'll be a good addition to the game. It's something that I'll keep an eye on. I definitely need to play Monster Hunter World, the original game, some more, but it was a good way to start things off. I don't think anyone was expecting to see a new expansion of the Monster Hunter World franchise, and we saw it within this presentation with Sony State of Play. Next up was an indie game called River Bond that looked kind of interesting. You know, it was probably the weakest thing for the presentation for me, just because it looked just like another sort of dungeon crawling game where you play in an isometric angle with various friends and stuff like that. I guess one of the cool things about it was that the fact that there will be character skins from other games like Shovel Knight, games like Guacamelee, other indie games. I really don't expect this to be a PS4 exclusive title or anything. It did look nice from a graphical standpoint. It kind of has that pixel shaded, you know, that pixel vibe to it, sort of a bit like Minecraft and whatnot, but I thought it looked a bit better. There were some nice effects going on when they were blowing stuff up, but, you know, probably the weakest point of the presentation for me, but considering the rest of the stuff that we got, it definitely wasn't very disappointing. Next up, we got a tease of a game that Sony is actually developing themselves, so this will be a PS4 exclusive. It started out in a jungle-like atmosphere, and I was like, oh great, another Uncharted. It looked very Uncharted-ish, and I'm not an Uncharted hater or anything like that, but it's just never a series that I really super got into. They feel more like over-the-top movies than really based on gameplay, but that's just my personal opinion on it. But then, there was the cameo of Predator, and a Predator game will be coming to the PS4 in 2020, and this just looks absolutely awesome to me. Now I'm completely invested in it. It sounds like the gameplay is going to be similar to stuff that we have seen recently with Friday the 13th, where you have a character playing Jason and everyone on the map is trying to take down Jason. It sounds like it's going to have that sort of same vibe, maybe a bit like Evolve, where characters are playing the game online with friends and trying to take down the Predator. And I don't know if someone will be able to control the Predator or not. They haven't quite said yet, but I'm definitely very excited for this game. Predator is a franchise that I always thought would make a great video game. The only really good Predator video game we ever got was, of course, Alien vs. Predator in the arcade. The Super Nintendo one was pretty decent as well, but it's great to see Predator getting its own game, and I think this could be actually something that's a lot of fun. I ended up really enjoying Friday the 13th on the PS4. I'll probably pick it up again when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. So a Friday the 13th style game with starring the Predator, like, that sounds super cool to me. I was definitely very stoked to see that, and I can't wait to get more information on it. Next up was the star of the show, something that we all knew about this going into the presentation, as Sony said it would be at this presentation, and that is Medieval. We got some more information on Medieval, and I think it looks really good. This was a game that was pretty popular on the PS1. It is a bit dated in terms of controls and things like that, but I think this HD remaster is going to do a lot of good for that series. I think it'll make people a fan of the series. The game looks very, very well done. It kind of reminds me sort of the Spyro HD reimagining that we saw recently. Obviously, it has that same sort of vibe to it, but I think this game looks great. It comes out on October 25th, right around time for Halloween, and considering that, you know, it's sort of a spooky game, has skeletons and crap like that, even the main character, of course, is a skeleton, like, I think this game will do very well. It's honestly a game that I'm really looking forward to playing, as I thought the PS1 game was definitely a great game, but it's a game that it's sort of hard to go back to and play, and I think this HD remaster of the game looks really good, and it looks like they're actually taking their time and effort with it, so I was definitely pleased to see the progression of this game. And then we were introduced to a new game where you play as a flying squirrel and try to avoid natural disasters in a real world thing called Away. And on paper this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but seeing the gameplay, it reminded me a lot of Deadly Creatures. Now, Deadly Creatures released on the Wii, and you played as various deadly creatures, you know, small creatures, but it sort of worked. And of course the game had an overarching story of humans actually doing something, but I think even if you take that away, I think that's what Away is actually going to be. It looks like it's a big open world. You play as a small flying squirrel trying to combat enemies and get through areas or trying to make it to a sanctuary. I don't know. On paper, it just sounds like a game that wouldn't work, but from what I saw of the game and what we saw at Sony State of Play presentation for it, I thought it looked pretty solid. It's definitely a game that I want some more information on. As a fan of Deadly Creatures, I think this game looks right up my alley, so it looks like something that I'll be keeping my eye on. I definitely want to see if there is some sort of overarching story, if there is something actually going on, or if it's simply you just playing a flying squirrel and trying to get to the sanctuary. What else is there? Why are these natural disasters happening in this area? That's the kind of stuff I want to know about, but so far so good. Away was kind of impressive. And then we got a Days of Play PS4 announcement, which is a special PS4. I don't care. What's the next thing? And then the final thing that they showed during this Sony State of Play presentation was going back to the start of the presentation. We got that little Final Fantasy VII soundbite, and now they showed off some brand new footage of Final Fantasy VII Remake with the promise of more information coming in June. So more than likely Square Enix will be showing off this game during their E3 conference presentation, but wow, this game just looks absolutely phenomenal. I know, I used to not be a big fan of Final Fantasy VII. I get it, but after getting it on the Switch and playing it again for the first time after 20 years, I'm definitely enjoying the game a lot more. I still haven't finished it yet. I'm about 40 hours into it, but it's definitely a timeless RPG, and I think the graphical style that they're using in this game is really good. I do want to see how fans' reactions are when they shift into the combat, because the combat is more of a real-time thing as opposed to the traditional turn-based RPG that we saw in Final Fantasy VII. So it's more like Final Fantasy 15 than Final Fantasy VII when it comes to the combat system, so I think that could potentially turn some people off, but the game just looks absolutely amazing, and it's great to see that this game is actually a thing. You know, there actually are being progressions made on this game. This game actually will be coming out, and we actually got to see some information on it. I think that really helped set this Sony State of Play presentation way beyond the original presentation. Like, that was a problem with the first presentation. There were no surprises. There was nothing cool. There was nothing like, wow, holy shit, you needed to watch this presentation. You need to go back and watch this presentation. But with this presentation, they managed to fix all that. They showed a lot of bangers. They showed new surprises like the Predator game. They showed games that we want to see information on, like Final Fantasy VII Remake. So all in all, like, I've got to tip my hat to Sony on this one. This was a very, very good presentation. It was arguably way 100 times better than the previous presentation. It still had that good presentation value in terms of being nice and quick and snappy, no filler, no fluff, just games, and I really enjoyed this presentation. I'm definitely shocked. I'm gonna go back and watch the presentation again to see if I missed anything, little details in some of the games and stuff, but honestly, a very great presentation, and it really has me positive for the future of Sony State of Play events. I think they really set a pretty high bar now that they're going to have to somewhat come up to whenever they do subsequent presentations. You're coming out here with bangers and stuff like this in the middle of May, I think people are going to want to see more bangers. Now, it is interesting, though, that, of course, The Last of Us 2 and Death Stranding still don't have a release date. It makes you wonder. But all in all, a fantastic presentation. I definitely really enjoyed it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys enjoyed it too. So let me know in the comments section down below what you thought of Sony State of Play presentation for the month of May. Were you disappointed with it? Did you like what you saw? And how freaking cool does that Predator game look? Like, I want more information. I want gameplay on this game. It's not coming out till 2020, which is a bit of a disappointment. Like, I want a beta of this. Like, I want to see what this game is about. As a fan of the Predator movies, like, this has a lot of potential. I hope they do some different locales, you know, not just the jungle, but do some of the stuff like they did in Predator 2 as well. But all in all, it's a very solid presentation. I'm still shocked. I'm still shocked that I liked it this much. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.